cannot invent and pioneer if you cannot accept failure.
We wanted people that were insanely great at what they did.
Nobody was making any money at all. Most people thought the internet was going to be a fad.
Steve, how do we know each other?
Well, 26 days before my 10th birthday, you were born. And that's when I met you, or sometime after that. Were y'all still in St. Louis when you were born, or were you already in Oklahoma City?
I mean, I was in St. Louis for a whopping like 6 months. So if you met me there, that's impressive.
Yeah, maybe
probably
so.
Oklahoma City.
Probably
Yeah.
Oklahoma City, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because usually, oftentimes we would go to your mom and dad's house in the summertime, where your mom would ply me with all of the junk food that I never got at home.
I mean, it's amazing I'm not 300 pounds. I used to wake up and eat like those cinnamon sugar donuts. You know how you'd buy them by the dozen? I'd eat like 9 of those to like start the day.
Yeah, carbs and sugar, just so you're on your way.
Absolutely.
So yeah, if all you out there in podcast land haven't figured out now that my sister is Jim's mother. And
yep. I think what's funny is like when you realize you have a rock star uncle, it comes in different waves. And my first experience was I had to have been in high school, and mom's like, Steve's gonna be on MTV. And in my mind, it's like, you have made it. You have won a Grammy. You are it. Because for people that don't know what MTV is back in the day, imagine, I guess, YouTube, but it's one channel. So everyone has to watch the same thing. And that was back when music videos were the thing. And I remember like your music video came on, we like stayed up, and it was like, I think you were getting beat up by kids at a playground, but it was awesome. And I was just like, Steve's a god. Like that was like one of my first milestones.
that was national television, you know.
And like what year was that? Was it like 99 maybe?
96.
Oh wow. Okay, so maybe
yeah. Because like that was when our album Kent came out, and we made the video with Robert Gordon, who's gone on to become quite the documentary filmmaker and author. That was a fun day. We just rode bikes all over town and then let some kids beat us up.
Yeah, and I think the part was nice.
Yeah, the song was called Theme From, spelled THEEM. So I think it's on YouTube.
Yeah, I think that's 'cause I was looking for it, and it holds up.
We're all young and skinny.
And then, so that was the first time I was like, oh, I think Steve's doing something really cool. And then the second time, you live in Memphis, a lot of family in Memphis. I was in Memphis for the holidays, and I walk in with Joanne, and you're performing, and we go to the bar, and we'll say I'm 21. I think I'm pretty close, but let's just say I'm like nervous to be in that situation.
Right.
And I go to order like a Bud Light tall boy, and I go to the bar, and he's like, wait, you know Steve Selvidge? I'm like, oh yeah, Steve's my uncle. And he goes, there's a lot of stars in Memphis. He goes, Steve Selvidge is a superstar. He's like drinks on me. And I was like, what? Because I have probably like $7 in my pocket, and I'm like, this is amazing. So yeah, man, you're getting me the hookup at a very early age.
My pleasure. I'm glad I can help.
Yes. And then the final one, then I'll let you talk, is when we showed up to Memphis another year, and I'm getting my luggage at the baggage claim, and there's essentially a statue of you at the baggage claim. And I was like, Mom, I was like, there's like a statue thing of Steve at the baggage claim. And she's like, yeah, they did this whole thing. And so I'm like, man,
there's a large photograph of me and other people on stage. And I started calling that, it was a fictitious band. It was I called it the Baggage Claim All Stars. Thankfully, that is no longer in the airport. Thank God.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure like just the rise in tourism with that, they had to like take it down, right? And just kind of
they couldn't handle it.
The demand. Oh
Yeah.
man. So like what's interesting to me is like, well, like I'll even start with your journey. Like actually we'll even go to like very beginning because I have a theory I want to lay on you. Like,
Okay.
because you grew up in a house that had like an amazing musician and your dad and my
hmm
grandfather. And obviously that has an impact, right? But like here's like a really dumb, I'm so excited to ask you all these dumb questions, but like what was it like growing up when that's like surrounded? Because you're just aware of it through osmosis, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll get you to my theory.
Okay. Well, it was really fun. Because you know, even as just a little kid, I could pick up on like just the excitement of the gig, especially because my dad played, he made music with his friends and stuff, and and his friends' kids are now musicians as well, like Jim Dickinson and his sons, Luther and Cody Dickinson, and Luther and I are super tight, and we just did a record together with our friend Paul. But anyway, especially when it was like a festival or an outdoor gig or something, it was just like it was kind of like the circus or something, but it was like it was rock and roll, and I mean, I loved music from the jump. Just earliest memories of being into stuff, and so, and also just because like I'm a good deal younger than your mother and other aunts and uncles, so like they had like a crazy music collection in the house as well, from like the 60s and 70s. But yeah, for the biggest thing though was just it was like an excitement to it. It was like it was just because it's performing, and it's also just like the kind of I early on keyed in on the rhythm of like musicians hanging out, just the shit talk or whatever. Like it was, and that's my favorite part about being a musician is like the 30 minutes before a rehearsal, or afterwards. I mean, I'll stay there forever, just like hanging out, talking,
Yeah.
So yeah, I loved it from the start. I loved everything about it.
Yeah, so you're like immersed at an early age, and so you're probably getting the instrument at an early age. And so I was reading this book. It's called Bringing Up Genius. It's by this guy Laszlo Polgar, and he's this like PhD, and he's like, can you like raise a genius? And so he got some lucky lady to have kids with him, and he had 3 girls, and he's like, I'm going to try and make them a genius at chess, and he successfully got all 3 to be a grandmaster, and then the third one she was like number 1 in the world. And so his formula was like, okay, first introduce them very early, like before the age of 6, like around 5 or 6. The second is they have to enjoy it, and then the third, then you go serious with the practice. And
Right.
it was kind of interesting as you broke it down. I was actually thinking of you. I was like, you were probably introduced early and you obviously enjoyed it, because I think Sid said, I forget what age, he's like, oh yeah, Steve was better at the guitar than I was at like age 13 or 14, whatever it was. But like, do you remember how early it was? And like, the other thing is like, when did you decide to go all in on this?
Okay. First of all, let's circle back to that genius word. So I feel fairly confident in my talent, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't apply the term genius to me. So no, but I mean, it was sort of, there were components of that were similar for sure, but um the biggest thing that my dad did was he just made it available, you know,
It's
but
like an option. Yeah.
he didn't push it. He wasn't like, you got to be a musician, he just, for both my brother and myself, it was just like, is there, if you have a question, I'm here with answers. If I could, maybe if um so, but early on, I mean, I was fascinated with instruments for sure. I mean, like just the guitar was very seductive. I mean, I remember my dad played every Friday and Saturday night at a bar, and this is when everybody smoked in bars. I would like, that, on the weekday or whatever, like Monday or whatever, I would open up the case and like the smell would waft out, and I would just look at the guitar. It was all battered and scuffed up, and I was just like, man, it was like Excalibur or something. I don't know. It was, it's like, this is the real deal, man. This is like, this guitar is in the trenches. And I was fascinated by that. And yeah, I'm trying to think of, so I got a bass when I was like 7 years old, maybe. And that was just like the Kiss influence.
Oh, nice.
I've got a rad picture of me with that bass on Christmas morning, like with my hand up in the air. And I was very serious about I mean, just the being on stage and just like the massive event of it, and Kiss being a big, and seeing my dad with Mudboy and the Neutrons on the stage. It was, it was just like, these were like grown men, looming large. And I don't know. I got the bass and I kind of messed around with it a little bit. And then my dad had gotten a drum kit for my brother because he had expressed some interest in playing drums. And then he kind of he didn't get with it really. But so then I kind of took over and I was going to be a drummer. And this is like 9 years old, probably 10. It's hard to remember the exact timeline, because it gets compressed. But I remember like I was playing drums, but I was okay. I'm still just kind of okay at the drums, not very good. And playing along to records, but it was like when you're playing drums by yourself, it's kind of, I don't know, for me the payoff wasn't as much there. And then one day I was with my dad at this place called Strings and Things, which is like the local guitar store. That's kind of where all the Memphis musicians of note hung out. And my dad was kind of, he was, I mean, that was the other thing, just seeing my dad being kind of like a made guy, people knew him, and I'd seen him in like the newspaper and stuff. And it's like, wow, man. And like, so he kind of had run of the place. So he would go in and get like some guitar picks or strings or whatever he needed. And so, in an effort to keep me from wandering off, he just sat me down, put a guitar in my hands, plugged it into an amp, and was like, here, mess around with this, only just to keep me occupied.
So it's like today's iPad. I need to start using a guitar and an amp
yeah,
instead of an iPad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the amp was a Roland Jazz Chorus, which is like this amp from if you think of any music from the 80s, it has like this clean, washy sound. It's like that amp. And I played something that kind of sounded like the Police. I was, because I'd had my hands on the fretboard with the bass. So, but anyway, I made a sound that sounded like something on a record. I was like, whoa, wow, I did it. And it was kind of revelatory. And then my brother had gotten really into David Bowie. And so we had always on play the Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. So that album just blew my mind. The guitar sound on that album blew my mind. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to figure out a way to do this. So I asked my dad, I was like, can you show me how to play Ziggy Stardust? He's like, well, I'll show you E, A, and D chords and get those under your belt, and then we'll go from there. So I got to where I could go between those chords, and then that was it. It was just that, like, I was completely hooked at that point. And I was probably 10 years old, and it was like the die was cast. It was just like guitar was my thing, and it chose me, and it's been a lifelong, it's been 40 years of obsession and, constant companionship. But it was just something that I did, but yeah, I mean, like, I don't know how real of a notion I had as a kid of like what was possible. I just wanted to be a rock star or whatever, but also wanted to be an accomplished musician. I was, I wanted to be able to, I was really inspired by Jimmy Page and the fact that he was a session guy before he was super rock star. I was like, I want to play sessions, man. I want to be the idea that you could come in and just like super cold, just like, you know, never have heard something and play it. And, you know, so early on I was fascinated with that. And I didn't really put too much thought into it other than it's just all that I wanted to do. I mean, I can remember being in like the first grade and it was like, I didn't want to be a fireman or an astronaut or, you know, I wanted to be a musician. I remember saying that like in first grade. It's like,
Wow.
what do you want to be? I was like, I want to be a musician, you know? And so it was just what I did, you know, and really it kind of was in a vacuum for the longest time. You know, it's just me in my room playing guitar. But when I started skating, you know, in the mid 80s, that's when the whole, like the second wave of skateboarding really took off, you know, with like, that's where Tony Hawk came up and, you know, the Bones Brigade and with skating came hardcore music and it was really accessible, you know. It wasn't like Motley Crue or like these god like rock stars with huge hair and, you know, on the stage that I would never even get close to. It was bands that I was hanging out with that were coming to these all ages shows at the Antenna Club. And it was like, yeah, let's start a band. It was like, you play guitar? I was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, we'll just write some songs. And so that's kind of, you know, where it started interacting with other people, not just, you know, shedding in my room. And to your point about, you know, like being serious about practice, I was never like, I got to practice, you know, it's like, oh, I need to, you know, it was either.
I need to get in my 3 hours a day. It's
no,
like, this is what I'm obsessed. I want to do this right when I get home from school.
Yeah. It was just like, I can't think about anything else. I can't keep my hands off of this thing. Or, you know, I don't know how to play Stairway to Heaven and I need to figure that out. Like, we got to work
something
on
that's
this.
kind of interesting because like with the drums, you're like playing to music and then you hear these songs like, oh, I need to learn how to play that. So that's the motivation. Even before like, oh, I'm gonna learn to play the guitar and learn these chords. You're like, no, I want to know how to play that song. Is that kind of like the catalyst that would like motivate you to learn more and more?
Yeah, it was just, you know, I love the music so much. I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to know, sorry, I'm taking a little bit of a journey so I can get some water. I wanted to know the mechanics of it. You know, I don't know. It was just all I ever thought of. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there never was that much conscious thought. It was just all that I did, you know. It was just a foregone conclusion, sort of. But all, you know, also, I mean, it was just all in, but I was obsessed. When I get into something, I'm really into like the minutia of it. I've got so much useless information in my brain about so many things, and guitar was right for that. So like, you know, even early on, you know, I was very conscious of like, okay, Fender was sold to CBS in 1965 and like things changed, like a pre-CBS Strat, like all the minutia of vintage guitar. Like I was early on way into vintage guitars. You know, I knew that my dad's, you know, compadre, Lee Baker, who was a hero of mine, guitar hero of mine. I knew that he had a 59 Les Paul, a Sunburst Les Paul, which is like, even then, like kind of the holy grail of vintage guitars. And I knew that that's what Jimmy Page played, you know. So it was.
So you're kind of like nerding out on all aspects of, which kind of speaks to like wanting to do sessions because it's like you're this hired gun that can come in and do anything. Yeah. So what was there this ever inflection point? Because I feel like especially with like you and Sydney and your dad and Gran, like everyone's so sharp and even like almost academic, right? Your brother's a doctor. Like, was there ever this point where you're like, oh, this is the time I'm not going to go down a traditional path and I'm going to do this? Or was it like not even like a question? It's like, I'm doing this. And like, what was that big point where you went all in? Was it with your band Big Ass Truck and you're like, let's tour?
Yeah. So there's a couple. And you know, my dad was, he was very influential to me in so many ways, but he was like, he was like, go to school, like, learn something else. It'll be good. If you're talking to a record executive and you can talk about something other than music, that might pique his interest, and he might, stick around a little bit longer and actually listen to your band or whatever. So, I'm in high school, I'm in a couple of bands here and there, nothing much is going on. But so I definitely made the decision, to go to what was then Memphis State, now the U of M. I made a decision not to go out of town for school. And, to be honest, like, I wasn't that great of a student. I tested well. I got put into the advanced classes, and I was just like, I didn't ask for this. I love learning, and like, when it's something that I'm interested in, I mean, like, it's just, I retain, and but the structure of school, like, some people just aren't made for it. Like the school that we have is traditional school in the States, So I don't know what colleges I could have got into anyway, but I got into Memphis State. But I made a choice to do that so I could stay in town and play music, because there was I already knew that Memphis had such a legacy, and like these people were still there, So I'm at Memphis State, and I get in a band with this dude, Robbie Grant. Their guitar player had left, and he was like, I knew him from high school, and he was like, hey man, can you come play with us? And I was kind of like, yeah, I'll play with you. Even though, like, they did, like, so I had a band called Oversoul, and we played all original music, and nobody came to see us because the music wasn't whatever. It was a little too intellectual, but and Robbie had this band Thrill Confusion, and they mainly played covers. And I was like, well, they're not doing it on their own merits, they're just doing covers, but they played to like a lot of people. So I joined that band, and it was like, that was really like when I was sort of let off the leash. Like, I was like, people, there was a crowd, and they were stoked, and I was like, I'm here for this, man. Like, the shirt came off, even the pants came off.
Absolutely.
And I had like just all this hair, like long hair, and but because I'd seen Purple Rain, I was just like, I want to do that. So I'm kind of bouncing around here, but so then that band kind of falls apart, and I start Big Ass Truck. The guy was like, hey man, can your band play? I was like, that band's broken up, but I'll put something together. And so I called Robbie, and that band started. So Big Ass Truck kind of got big quick. Like, we played our first show in January of 1993, and by spring we were headlining the club. And things started to move fast. And then we started to tour. And this is back in the 90s. So college, nothing, it was like, there was one, there was like the computer center where you could kind of get online, but it was real primitive. And so to get classes, like, it was just like a mess. Like, you'd wait in line for hours to try and get signed up for these classes, and then you didn't get them. So I was an anthropology major, and I'm going through, Big Ass Truck starting to get bigger, and it's like this one semester I got none of the anthropology classes that I needed to take. They were all full. And so what you would do is you would wait for the ad drop date to see if somebody dropped a class. And I was just like, but by that point, literally, I would, like, during exams, I would take the exam as early as possible. I'd be at my desk with a bag and 2 guitar cases next to me. I would turn in my exam, grab my stuff, run out to the street, and the van would pull up. I'd throw my stuff in, and we'd go on tour. I mean, that actually happened.
Oh my gosh.
And so when I didn't get all those classes, it's just like, man, I'm not gonna do this. I can't wait, like, to see if I stand a lot. I'm not.
Yeah.
We're going on tour. I'm just like, I'm gonna sit this semester out and see what happens. I might go back. I never went back. You know, so that was a big inflection point right there. I mean, that's when it was like, okay, I'm not going to finish school. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to go to the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge. And so then we toured a lot and did our thing for about 8-9 years. But then I'm still like working jobs and like catering and stuff, like when I'm off the road, you know. And then around about, I want to say 1999 or 2000, Big Ass Truck was still going, but we were about to stop. I started, it must have been 2000, because I started playing more gigs in town, because like for the longest time, it was just, I was on tour with Big Ass Truck. And when I was home, I might play a gig here and there, but it was just like Big Ass Truck was all I did. That was my identity. That was my worldview. That's all I knew. And then I started to play with other people, and that was really educational. So anyway, when I started playing with people more, I realized that I could just get gigs in town. And I remember being like, I'm not going to sign up for catering gigs anymore. So that was just like, I'm going to try and do just this for my living. And then Big Ass Truck broke up, and then I was in town. I wasn't on tour anymore. And I was like, I got to make a living. If I'm going to be doing this, I got to play. And that was really interesting, because prior to that point, you know, I'd learned what I'd learned, and then I'd had the band, and I was like, I thought because I was 20 whatever years old and my band had toured a lot and been on MTV, I was like, well, I know everything now. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and I was just wrong about it. And I started playing with other people that I didn't, you know, that I sort of knew, but that, you know, in the Big Ass Truck days, I would have been like, well, that's not what I do. You know, that's their thing. Like, kind of like almost being shitty about it. And I had to learn all this other music, and I realized there was so much that I didn't know. And then so I started playing 3 nights a week at this one bar, and playing with all these people that I'd never played with before, playing songs I never played before, playing genres I never played before, stuff that I thought that wasn't cool, and stuff that I realized was very cool. And, you know, one of the greatest gifts I was ever given was like having to learn music that I didn't think that I liked, and having to find my place in that. And so from 2001 to, you know, like to 2004 or 5, I just grew exponentially, you know. And then it was just, you know, from then on, it was just like either I was in a band doing stuff, or I was just doing stuff in town, you know. And then, you know, in 2010, I joined the Hold Steady, and that's been kind of the main constant ever since. So that's sort of a really wacky, poorly described timeline of all of that. But
Yeah, well, I think it's so interesting, the inflection points of like when you go all in on something. It's like you have the momentum, the writing's on the wall, like Big Ass Truck is taking off. You're about to tour. You can't like miss out on that. And then it's like, then it's after that, it's like, okay, let me like cobble together how I make a true career out of this full time. And then it clearly pays off. Like one thing I'm interested in is like the business of music, because like my idea is like, and even like what it is now versus then, because like back then I think it's like, okay, you like start playing in your garage, you get a band, you get a record deal, and then I don't know what happens from there. You like make it big, and then you're like all of a sudden 30 years later you're playing at Vegas, right? It's like what is the business of music? Whereas there's all these other revenue streams, because it's like from doing session gigs to like doing one-off things, or even like, you know, you have your own recording studio, you could be doing stuff there. Like, and then as you go into a band, how that's like, if that's more stable, or that gives, you know, a little bit more of a foundation versus bouncing around, like how like what is kind of your North Star you look to and like, oh, that's the way you should do it?
I mean, I'm fortunate that currently I'm in a band that, you know, that works consistently and is at a level that, you know, it can, I mean, it's, we're not rich and famous, you know. We have a very dedicated community around us, and, you know, it generates income, but it's, you know, it's the business has changed so much. Like in the Big Ass Truck days, you know, we weren't anywhere near as big as the Hold Steady is. We never got anywhere near as big as the Hold Steady. But I got substantial royalties in the Big Ass Truck days because it was before streaming. Streaming just eviscerated that revenue stream of like royalties from radio or, placement, in a show or something. So before that, and then still to this day, it's just like I'll take up any kind of hustle I can find. Like in the early mid 2000s, there was a guy in town who had a contract with a cheerleading company. Like, so they'd have all these cheerleading competitions. They needed music for it. It cost too much money to use the actual song, but if they had a re-record of it that was more geared towards dance, then they could use that. So I would get paid a couple $100 to make these sound alike tracks that were like just a minute 30. It was just like a snippet of the song. So somewhere out there, there's a CD with me programming a drum machine, playing guitar and bass and singing, because somebody told me that you had a boyfriend. It's like
some girls doing a back handspring to your ballad.
Yeah. Man, I did some weird stuff, man, but or just, nowadays I'll play on someone's record and I'll just record it here at my house, in my studio. So it was, my dad taught me, like, if you're not superstar level, you gotta connect the dots and just hustle, and he was, really more than being like showing me how to play something or, because it's funny because, he says, I'm a better guitar player. It's like, well, no, it's just that I do something different. Cause like my dad's arrangements and his accompaniment of himself was, we talk about it. Me and Luther talk about it. It's so just clean and pristine and not easy to do at all. And then never mind the fact that he was one of the greatest singers ever. I never opened my mouth around him for years because I was just like, you got that, bro. But anyway, like the thing when he knew really from the jump that the die was cast with me. He could tell the difference between me and my brother. He's like, he's going to do this. There's nothing's going to keep him from doing this. And he told me when I was like, I think like around 18 or something, when it was like, he knew that where I was going. He's like, look, I think it's great and you're talented and, you're on this journey and like, you might hit big and make a lot of money and be famous, probably not, but there's no reason it couldn't happen. But you might also have to, do some things to make some money. And he was like, but here's what you need to be aware of. You're not thinking about it now, but you have friends and you're all the same age and you're going to get older. And they're probably going to maybe get married before you do, maybe have a kid before you do, certainly get that first new car before you do, buy that first house before you do, because they're gonna get a job, and have a steady income, and hit these milestones. And you might not be there, you might get there, and everything he said was true, so it was a matter of just reconciling that this is what I do, and also. There was, talking about inflection points, I call them peeling off points, with like you're in high school and you're playing with guys, and then they bug out and go to college and they don't really do it anymore. So that happened. These guys fell off. I'm still here. And then so you're with these guys and guys and gals or whatever, and you're playing, and then maybe they graduate college and get a job, and then they don't, but I'm still here. Or somebody has a kid. Well, I can't go on tour anymore. It's like, but I'm still here, Yeah. So it was just like the group that was left was like, those were the people that, still did it, So
how do you manage that comparison? Cause like that's tough. Even like me is very different. But like I was working in finance and investment banking, and actually funny, I had a conversation with your dad because I was like, I don't think my life is to stare at spreadsheets. I was like,
Yeah.
I want to do something more creative, and I like went to like startups and did things. And there's this real comparison. It's like, oh, your buddies that are still in finance are crushing it. They're doing
Yeah.
well, and you want to be like cool and confident in what you do, but it's not easy to not look at the other side like, oh wow, they're doing very well. Like, how did you either prepare for that or just be okay with it? Because I struggled a little bit.
Yeah. I think just because I was loving what I was doing, you know, I mean, certainly there was just, moments where it was just like, hey, we're going to do this. It's like, well, good. I can't afford to do that. But the thing was just that, like, I don't know, man. I was just always on stage playing and having a blast, and I never really tripped about it too much. It was just because I wasn't having to get up on Monday morning and, you know, and I worked enough just in catering or just, in the kitchen. It's like, I mean, I knew what it was like to be like, I remember when like in Big Ass Truck, we all got jobs at this one catering place. And it's the first time I'd like worked in a long time, other than music. And I remember like we played that weekend after having worked all week, and I was like, oh my God, that's the feeling of the weekend. Like, yeah, I'm so ready. Like, this is so nice to just, but I was just always focused on, getting somewhere, and also there was just always just the musical journey, like just beyond the finance of it. It was just honing my craft, learning more, like, discovering things, writing, so it usually it was okay. I mean, there were certainly times where I was like, I wish I could afford that, and there were certainly times I was just like, I want that, I'm going to put it on a credit card, now I have debt, yay.
Yeah, man. So what's so interesting is like you kind of like went that path of like you guys started Big Ass Truck. It took off pretty quick. You go on tour, you get on MTV. But if you were starting today, like what would you do differently? Are you like, oh, I have to be really good at not just making music, but documenting it with video and getting on TikTok? Or like what are you even thinking through if you're dropped in and it's 2023, nobody knows who you are, and you have to kind of get started and quickly, like what would you do in today's kind of situation?
I have no idea. I mean, I can't even fathom what it's like to be 20 years old in 2023. I mean, I was 20 when Big Ass Truck started. And I mean, I would, I don't know if it can be apples to apples. I mean, I know that if it were us, who knows how the world would have influenced us. But I mean, I guess we would just do all those things. I mean, we were really creative. Like, that's what I loved about the band, especially early on. It's like we were a gang, a crew, and like beyond just making music, I mean, we were making like little videos, or like Robbie was in film school, and like we were making, goofy little things that we showed before gigs, and we made it just, there was always like, we were creating content. There was just really nowhere to do it, so
To put it, yeah.
I feel like we probably would have been doing some of that, and that would have been, to have an avenue for it would have been great, but here again, like, when we were starting up, there was still the notion, I mean, indie rock was a nascent kind of thing, but like it was the notion of like, get a major label deal and get, on terrestrial radio and get tour support and get on a bus. And, that was the dream, we didn't quite get there. We never got on a bus, but, and it's so different now. It's like, I mean, there's still kind of radio, but there's streaming, and YouTube and you know and likes, and you know the metrics are so wildly different. You know,
Yeah.
it's almost it's almost like we're back to a singles market like it was in the 60s.
Wow. And is the path to monetization, because it's like not as much the royalties now, it's about touring, is it about merch? Is that really like the best way bands can make money?
I mean, it was up until 2020.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and so everybody's trying to figure it out now because it's changed. I mean, touring is way more expensive right now because
Really?
of the war in Ukraine and because of you know inflation related to that and COVID and all that. Yeah, I mean, touring. It just depends on what level you're at and what you're willing to do. I mean, a lot of people do privates, you
Yeah.
know, and it's just, you know, I mean, I don't know. It's just, you know, I know that we do what we do, the whole study, you know, and that's because we've been around for 20 years and have a community that supports us.
Yeah, your fans are insane, man. Like when I go to those shows, I mean, they are there and they're not even they're just intense on watching it. It's awesome. I mean, again, I was like in Dallas. I was like doing this little marketing workshop, and I think you were like in tour. So I was like, oh, I just missed my uncle, or I was like, I just missed the Hold Steady. I want to see them. The guy's like, oh, Hold Steady is hands down my favorite band. I was like, oh yeah, my uncle plays for them, and he like stopped in his tracks. He's like, your uncle plays for the Hold Steady. And like my credibility, like he did not care who I was. It just shot up like 10x. But you guys just came out with The Price of Progress. You wrote an album. Like another fun dumb question I'm excited to ask you. How the heck do you write an album? Like if someone's like, Jim, go write an album, like I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, is it songs first, or is it lyrics first? Is it music first? Are you trying to have this cohesive story, or does it just kind of fumble together in an amazing way?
Well, we've kind of established a workflow now since when Franz came back in 2015, and then we started writing in 2016, and that led to what eventually became an album called Thrashing Through the Passion. What we would do is Franz, the piano player, Tad, the other guitar player, and myself, we just write at home. I just, you know, come up with riffs, ideas, whole songs. I mean, it could be as little as a voice memo on our phone, or a fully fleshed out demo where I played drums and bass and everything and mixed it down. But anyway, that all goes into a Dropbox folder. And then Craig, our singer, just goes through things. And if he's like, oh, I got something for that. So then, because he's always writing lyrics. So he's got lyrics he's written, and then he could just flash on something and then just write to it. I mean, he's just prolific that way. So he just flashes on things. And then when we get, 10 to 12 things that he feels confident lyrically about, we get in a room, for a day and work on arrangements. And then this is how it's worked in the past couple of albums. And then, our producer, Josh Kaufman, he has ideas, and we kind of push things around and get it to where we like it, cut it. And that's it. I mean, we've written on the road before. We've, written in rehearsal rooms, but lately it's just been Tad, Franz, and myself come up with jams, put them in a Dropbox. Craig reacts to them, and we record them.
By the way, like my chief operating officer would be so excited to hear that, like, when I ask you how you write an album, your first word is workflow, and then you're doing like asynchronous work through Dropbox. That's actually pretty impressive. And then Craig just kind of dives in and is like, okay, I'm into this.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, we have to go to a castle in the UK and we just like work together and uncover. It's actually more like kind of modern and almost like, I mean, you're this remote startup.
Right. Well, and because before I was in the band, like everybody lived in Brooklyn, and they just, all hung out together, and it was just like they had a rehearsal space, and they just, Tad and Bobby would just bang out riffs together, and everybody else would come in. And we've done it every way conceivable. It wasn't a castle, but we rented a house in Asbury Park to, it's like, let's get here and like, let's just get some acoustics and like, because you've heard all the stories, like, man, we'll just get there with the acoustics, it'll be organic and we'll write, and we got there and we just got fucking ripped the whole time and like got nothing done. But whatever, and that was a weird time for us anyway, but so far this has proven to work for us,
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah, that's so. I'm always interested in the creative process on how you make that happen, and that was like one of the best answers I've heard. So it really is. So rock and roll to talk workflows and Dropboxes.
Yeah, totally.
So you have been on Game of Thrones. You've been on Billions with the Hold Steady. You've been on, I think, every late show conceivable.
Not Fallon, not SNL.
Okay, so that's like on the bingo card. You have 2 left to hit. It sounds like. So like,
those are gonna be tough.
Yeah, give me like a rock and roll story from any of those, or any like funny stories for those that are appropriate for this audience.
Right. I mean, the late shows are so much fun, but it's they do it day in, day out. There's not a lot of shenanigans,
Yeah.
It's very union. It's
And aren't you doing it at like 4:00? It's not like it's a night show, and you're just doing one song and then you're out.
Yeah. You get there in the morning, you set up, you run through stuff like over and over and over again for lights, for camera, for sound. 3:45 they start the show in real time. Now that's for the late shows. I remember we were playing Letterman, and you're going like, for some reason you have to get on an elevator to get somewhere. And Bobby and I got in the elevator, and the other guest on the show that was David Beckham. So we rode in the elevator with David Beckham.
That's
and I was cool. like, that is one incredibly handsome man. It's like that suit. Yeah, okay. Now
it's like you get it. You're like, all right, I get it.
Yeah. With Billions, that was, that's like movie making, TV making. So it's like, that was a 18-hour day or whatever. And
so for people to know, you guys were like on an episode as a band at a party, I think. So you guys were literally in the show.
Yeah, like with Game of Thrones, they just played our song. We recorded the Baron Maiden Fair, which is a part, which is in it, and that was a whole different thing. But yeah, we were like, so the premise is that Axe and his buddies think that they've cleared some major hurdle, and they're celebrating it. So he rents out a club and hires his favorite band, the Hold Steady, because the guy that did the show is a Hold Steady fan. Because prior to that, there was like his wife and her sister or whatever, like they go out drinking or whatever, they're in the car and like Sequestered in Memphis is playing. But so anyway, yeah, he has hired the Hold Steady to play this celebratory evening, and like, ladies and gentlemen, the Hold Steady, and we play what was then a new song for us. And so it's like you get there and you run through the song, and they're like, you're playing the song, like, all right, stop, okay, good. And then you go and wait for 3 hours, and then they set up another shot, and so but I was hanging out with Damian Lewis because he's a rock enthusiast, I think maybe a guitar enthusiast, and he was asking some questions about some stuff. I mean, I think he sort of saw us as exotic little animals, because we actually played rock and roll, and we've lived it our entire lives. So that was cool. I didn't get to meet Maggie Siff. I really wanted to, but so I stood close to her, and I was just like,
there you go.
There, yeah. At one point, like I had just been watching Band of Brothers, and like it was so awkward. Like he was in the middle of like we're talking about something. I was just like, I really like Band of Brothers, by the way. You know, I mean, because this dude's like, you know, it's like, I mean, he's famous. Like, you know,
he's big time. Yeah.
Yeah, your buddy who, or your guy that you work with might have known the whole steady, but like, this is several different levels. So anyway, we get done, and I'm just like, my hotel's around the corner from where we filmed it, and I'm like, I am going to get a bottle of wine and like the biggest order of pasta I can get, and just eat some pasta and drink some red wine and knock the F out, man. I've had a long day. So I walk in the hotel and I hear somebody go, "Hey," and I turn around and it's Damian Lewis, David Costabile, the guy that played Dollar Bill, and some other guys, and they're just hanging out, having drinks. They're like, "Come have a drink." And I'm like, "All right, cool." And so David Costabile's like, "You're not paying for anything." I'm like, "Okay, I'll have an old fashioned."
Let's go.
And so we just started hanging out, and like, we're sitting in a window, and people are walking by, and they're coming in, and like, you know, they're getting their pictures taken and stuff. And I am this grubby, dusty dude from Memphis who plays in a rock and roll band and just invisible, you know? But we just, and then like the bar closed, and the dude that played Dollar Bill was like, because Michter's was like a conspicuous sort of like sponsor or whatever, like, you know, they're always drinking Michter's on the show. He just pulls out a bottle of Michter's out of his backpack, and we just continue just raging. Like, it was amazing, you know, like, and it's like, okay, well, thanks, famous people. I had a good time.
Yeah.
You know, and I've eventually just sort of, you know, swerved on over to my room and went back home to Memphis, you know. It was interesting. That was a new wrinkle for sure. But that was probably the most, like, of all the shows, that was the most like celebrity experience that I had or whatever.
Yeah, I think that was peak Billions too, when it was just kind of everywhere, which was a really cool time. I
got way into the show. And I fell off because, you know, when COVID hit, we had to like purge a lot of our streaming subscriptions, and Showtime was one. I never picked it back up.
Yeah, it's like that's tough. Yeah, the amount we have to pay all the streaming services is a little ridiculous. So one thing we like to do is like pitch half-baked startup ideas. So I'm gonna do rapid fire ones that are probably gonna be horrible or amazing. You can decide. So the first one is, when I was growing up and Michael Jordan had retired, he launched his Michael Jordan fantasy camp, where you basically, like, it's these executives that pay like 35 or 40 grand to go for a week to Vegas, and you show up, you get a room, you get a book or a bag that's like a Jumpman bag that has all this stuff, shoes from Jordan, you know, uniforms. And then for the next 3 to 5 days, you're put on a team, you have an NBA coach that's coaching you, and you actually get to hang and meet Michael Jordan. And I was like, okay, that is amazing. I would love to do that one day. I think LeBron James now has one, but like, there has to be an equivalent for guitar players, for rock and roll, for, you know, very wealthy people that still love playing guitar, that would fork over a lot of money to hang with you and other musicians for like a week fantasy camp. First, does that even exist? 2, how amazing or horrible is that idea?
Okay, well, we do something similar. It's not a week. In the past, we did a thing where you could pay to do a sound check jam with the band, get up and play drums or bass or guitar with us.
How much would people pay for that?
I don't know. I was like, I left that up to the manager. David Gottlieb he has done such a good job of figuring out ways to monetize things, because you have to. You know, it's like everything's so expensive, and you know, so what we do now is there's different tier. You can just buy the ticket, come see the show, come and go, and that's it. So what we're doing in Portland this weekend is you can buy this all-in thing where there's what we call sound check party, which we've been doing for a while. Like we'll do our normal sound check, and then we'll open up doors, and the people that pay for it come in, and we do a sound check, and we have a moderator who does a Q&A, which then leads to a certain song, and then we open up the floor to questions from people that pay to go to the sound check jam. So there's that.
That's a smart idea.
Yeah. Now, and so we're adding things to it now. So Franz, our keyboard player, is a writer. He has 2 novels published. And so he's doing like some sort of writing kind of thing, like a talk. I think it's just a talk. And then Tad and I are doing like a guitar experience. Like it's not a lesson, but it's like we're going to break down like 3 songs and how we, wrote it, how we decide who plays what. We'll talk about gear. We've never done this before, so it's all kind of theoretical right now. But we're going to talk about gear and that kind of thing. So the guitar. Anyone who's interested in guitar can come to that.
Man, you should have product sponsors for that. You should get some sort of affiliate code as you're recommending gear and people go off and buy it. I mean, that's like the best product placement ever. Right.
I mean, I've got some endorsements with, quite a few pedal companies already. I mean, it's just like, 35% off basically, but yeah, I mean, it's all kind of being formulated right now, and that's also because we've changed our touring model. We don't get in a bus and go from town to town to town every night. We do these residencies. We're playing Thursday through Saturday or Friday through Sunday in one city.
Nice. Yeah.
In one venue, and it becomes more of an experience. Just because, I mean, the way our crowd is, it's like, they're not coming out on a Monday. I mean, some might, but
yeah.
And it's so, in that model has led us to kind of be able to improvise and think of new things. And so while we're not doing a week-long fantasy camp, we are offering immersive experiences, for people to take, to get sort of take a peek on the inside.
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool idea. Okay. All right. So you're already on top of that one.
Yeah.
And okay, I think I've got 2 more for you real quick. Another one is, so do you know what Cameo is? Have you seen what's going on with Cameo? So did you know Kevin from The Office, the kind of bigger guy, he reported his money on Cameo. He did like 1.5 million from recording cameos in 1 year, which is insane. And it's like, I think he charges like $300 a cameo. And I was like, okay, what would be like an equivalent of that with the music? Obviously you could just do Cameo, but it's like, we work with a lot of e-commerce brands that like, they're looking to do good content for TikTok. And so we can work with influencers through some platforms or get user generated content. And it's like, okay, if TikTok is like music based, what if you had this like productized service of getting a rock star to do your TikTok video and you charge an insane premium.
Right.
And you're like, oh, it's kind of honestly like what you were doing for like the cheer music. It's like, oh, that's the video you're trying to make. I'll help you like 10x the quality of that clip, that 60-second clip, and do the music over for it. So that's my half-baked idea.
I would love to get into that hustle. I don't think I'm famous enough. I'm not famous at all. So, I'm just, look, there's a large chunk of the whole SETI fan base that probably doesn't know my name at all. But I mean, it's crazy because I know that there's a effects pedal company called JHS. And Josh Scott he's found, that's his company. And he does cameos now because he is a YouTube influencer, because and I watched this grow in real time. So, 10 years ago, probably, or however long ago, you had, YouTube videos, everybody had their product that they were selling. And it was, so Josh Scott has his pedal company, JHS Pedals. And it's like, it's a static shot of the pedal, and it's okay. here's my clean tone. Now here's what the pedal sounds like. The mid control on this is, and it's like so after a while he was like, I can't do this. It's so boring. I hate it. I hate doing it. I hate demoing my pedals. I don't want to do it. So he just started, he was just like in his car, just like, yeah. So, I mean, here's the other thing too. He's like a mad pedal collector. He knows he's delving into the history of all these pedal companies, how it started. He's really into the minutia, but it just grew into what's now the JHS show. And it's a juggernaut. Oh, wow. I mean, like it's just like, I mean, it's got a lot of subscribers, a lot of views. They do live videos. It's become this whole thing. People get mad now because it'll be like, hey, this pedal that no one likes, it's really actually kind of cool. And then they're like, people trying to get $600 for them because they don't make them anymore. So anyway, he has become a YouTube personality. Like people just hang on what he has to say.
And he's probably driving a lot of purchases, like because how much is like an average pedal?
Anywhere from $100 to $300, depending on the sophistication. And like, he's like, he's not just promoting his stuff. I mean, yeah, he is there to sell his pedals, but he'll be like, okay, you know what? Today we're going to talk about Earthquaker devices, and we're going to get Jamie from Earthquaker on the show, and we're going to talk about their new pedal launch or whatever. So it's sort of anti-capitalism, in terms of like just promoting your brand, but in doing so, he's made this whole content other thing that so now people will pay him to talk about, I don't know what he does, but it's I mean, look, if someone would pay me to run my mouth, I would be in heaven.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's like I like when you go after a niche. It's not like you're going to this wide audience. It's a very specific audience, but the recommendations are going to be on point, and it's for like very premium, nice stuff. That's cool. And I know we're running up on time, but like my last idea was, I think you need to sling ginger snaps and make some sort of like a direct consumer ginger snap, like mail in a box company. We'd have to figure out the branding for it, but I think Gran was saying like you've perfected the recipe and make them better than she did. But anyway, that's we can talk more about that one offline, but that needs to exist.
Yeah, I mean, I crank out well over 1,000 cookies every year in December. I've thought about it, and like, I don't know if I like it being just the one time a year, but I should talk to Gottlieb about that. Like, see if I can pimp my cookies out.
Dude, and I think you should make it like the pumpkin spice latte. It's like you can't get them any other time in the year other than this window, and there's a wait list because you only make X amount, and then you just drive up the cost, right? It's all about scarcity and supply and demand.
Yeah, scarcity mindset, man. Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, Pappy Van Winkle. Hey, see this? You can't have it. Oh, yeah. Then take my money then.
Yeah, here's $5,000, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. So I'll go 3. We'll go kind of lightning round real quick. This is a question I like to ask. What is the nicest thing anyone's done for you in your professional career?
Oh my God. I don't know if I can answer that. The nicest thing that's anyone, it's when somebody that I look up to and worship and respect pays me a compliment, or not pay me a compliment, it acknowledges that I've done well. I'm trying to not to make it an ego thing.
Yeah.
But they're like being in Memphis, playing with like the guys that were on all the Al Green records, the high rhythm section, the Hodges brothers, Leroy, Teeny, Charles. The fact that they accept me and have, expressed their satisfaction with my playing it means the world. It's, I did a session with David Hood, who's played on so many records, like, I'll Take You There, the bass break, doom, 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 like that's him. 9 to 5, that's it.
Wow.
I did a session with him, and he just looked at me. He was like, "You're too young to be that good." So, and that sounds like I'm pumping myself up. I'm really not. It's just the fact that these guys have it all accepted me, because they didn't have to, So I'd say that.
No, that's pretty cool, man. And that's super motivation. It's like, wow, I'm clearly onto something. All right, second one. What dirt can you give on my mom? Bonus points if you can throw in any other family members in there.
Well, I would probably venture to say, first of all, I'm not going to rat your mom out, because I don't want,
you're not
those
a snitch.
consequences. Yeah, I don't want those consequences.
And just to know the power dynamic, my mom is the oldest and Steve is the youngest, if you can tell by the age gap. So yeah, the hurt would be coming.
To that end, I would say that probably when she was doing the most dirt, if there was, I was so young, I wasn't privy to it,
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You're so innocent. It's like, I don't know if that's wrong or right. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just all about, my big wheel or something.
All right. Well, I'll do a follow-up on that one. I'll let you think more about it. All right, the final one. Why is Purple Rain our family closeout song? So for people that don't know, like, we would go to Memphis every year, and Steve would do the show with his friends that was just so epic. And you'd usually do it at a place where it's like a BYOB bar, and we're hanging out in the whole family's front row, and we would just camp out for like 4 hours.
That was a group called the Pirates.
Yeah, it would escalate, and it was so much fun, but it always ended with you doing a solo, doing Purple Rain. Maybe you're ripping off a shirt, maybe you're not. But like, how did that come to be?
Well, again, Purple Rain, the movie, the album, the artist changed my life. Like it set me on my path. And then sometime in the late 90s, Big Ass Truck was on tour, and things weren't going super awesome. But we were playing in Colorado, and there was nobody there. I think it was in Aspen. There's just nobody there. It was a dud. The whole tour was a dud.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know what? I was like, let's just play Purple. I'm gonna play Purple Rain. Never done it before. But I knew the chords, and it was like, just these are the chords. We're gonna do this. So I did it. It was I was just like, this is so great. So I just kind of did it on and off, So then when that thing, the Pirates is just a loose group of friends playing cover songs, a lot of Bob Dylan and the band and Talking Heads and soul tunes and whatever, some David Bowie in there. So when I started playing with them, I brought whatever, Doug Somm and other things, to it. And so it's like, I can do Purple Rain. Let's do Purple Rain. So the reason it's the last song is because what are you going to play after Purple Rain? Nothing.
Can't follow it.
You can't follow that. I mean, the night is over. So, and it was also because of that, it was like, if people were starting to drag a little bit, or just, it's getting late, man, let's wrap this up. It's like, we're done. This is it. You're such a lovely audience. We'd like to take you home with us. We'd love to take you home. That's it. So yeah, that's why, because you don't follow Purple Rain.
Yeah, it always, that's how you end with a bang. But dude, this was so fun. I know we've gone way over.
So much fun.
Yeah. From I feel like your Instagram is amazing, but like, where should people go to follow you, or the Hold Steady, or even like the album that you fairly recently just did with everybody in Memphis with Paul and Luther? Yeah. Like, where should people go?
You can go to my Instagram at Steve Selvidge. You can go to the Hold Steady's Instagram, it's just, or holdsteady.com, org, I think, or net. Net. I don't know. Yeah,
We'll put it in the show notes.
Mr. Promotion here. The project that I did over the pandemic with my friends Luther Dickinson and Paul Taylor is called MEMMODS. That's MEM_MODS. We're on Instagram. It's out on the label that my dad started, Peabody Records. And if you go to @Peabody Records, that's on Instagram as well. And that's, I just use that Google machine and you can pretty much find me, I think.
Yeah, it usually works pretty well.
Yeah. You can also,
cool.
if you want to look at some film photography, you can follow my film photography Instagram, SSS_film_PIX.
Oh, I haven't even seen that. That's cool.
Yeah. I'll follow you. The past year has been like completely immersed in film photography. Like it's taken over my life and my wallet.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it does sound like when you get into something, like you go very deep and you nerd out on the minutia, like you said, which is
for sure. For sure. I mean, I'll be having conversations, and I know that I'm doing it, but I just don't stop myself. I'm just like, yeah, well, I mean, it's a fast lens. I mean, it's like a f1.7, and and I was shooting Ektar, and it was just like, it's crazy. But
that's awesome. We'll see. Miss you guys.
I hope to see you soon,
Franny. I know it's been too long. We're trying to get out there, but this was super fun, man. Really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it, dude.
Cool.